Freetown City Council will enforce new sanitation bylaws aimed at improving garbage management across the city. Freetown City Council stated that the laws came into effect after passing through Parliament unopposed for the required 21-day period. The bylaws require every citizen to register with approved trash vendors for a fee. In distant places, community garbage cans will be given. Non-compliance will result in a fine of 5,000 new Leones. City Council said they will be hiring 50 more Metropolitan Police officers and launching a public awareness campaign to enhance enforcement, among other things. So this morning, to talk about the new bylaws, enforcement, among other developments at City Council, we have Her Worship Mayor of Freetown, Yvonne Aki-Sawyerr. Good morning and thank you very much for joining us.
Morning, Fabian. Morning, Victor. Good morning, viewers.
We've had multiple conversations with you talking about sanitation in the city, much of the problems. I suppose these bylaws are coming now as solution or potential solution to some of these problems. But for some people, the bylaws are new. What are these bylaws?
Okay, thank you. So many people will be aware of the previous bylaws, at least theoretically. And actually, funny enough, for people who aren't aware of them, they're always proposing, oh, you for fine people them, we're not for the jail people them. So that's what the old bylaw said. But the point of non-compliance with the old bylaw was if you were caught illegally depositing garbage. So you need to be caught. There needs to be evidence. People need to see that you were throwing your garbage in the gutter or on the street. In a city with a population of 1.5 million people, which is roughly what we have today, and with only 100 Met Police, 150 is where we were, but, you know, through retirement, sickness, and so forth. Over the last few years, we've come back down to 100. So if you think about 1.5 million people and you think about 100 Met Police, you know, enforcing that bylaw means one Met Police has to be keeping an eye on 150,000 people. So it's not going to happen. And actually it also doesn't incentivize investment into the sector. So sanitation is the responsibility of the City Council. And in many countries, in many cities, you'll find that the City Council outsources this to the private sector. Why? Because of the level of capital investment required. You see that FCC has tricycles, we have trucks, but we had outsourced to a degree to micro enterprises. That required a whole value chain, which at different times got broken. Had we been able to operate the transfer stations we built in 2021, that would have meant that our tricycles would have had a longer lifespan and they would have been more profitable because they would have been working within the confines or the boundaries of those transfer stations, which are in the blocks. I'll come on to the blocks. If we had been able, if the government had provided the land to the World Bank that the World Bank had required in order for us to build a sanitary landfill and shut down Bomber and King Tom, that also would have improved the system we rolled out initially. Those two things didn't happen. As a consequence, the small micro enterprises that we invested in, the tricycle groups that we trained, provided with equipment, and set on their way with the hope that their profitability would enable them to grow faster and have more tricycles in the market, increase household waste collection, because those things didn't happen. And because also the Cleaner Zone competition, which was about behavior change, was also halted in the year when FCC wasn't able to collect property rates. So that value chain that we had designed had different things that broke. So coming in with this new bylaw is basically looking at lessons learned, saying, okay, we're going to need investment, but it's going to have to be people with deeper pockets who, even if they have challenges, they will have the resources to overcome those challenges. We also have looked at this and said, okay, people's behavior changed with the carrot, which was the prizes. I remember you were part of and Stella Bango as part of the judging for the Cleanest Zone competition, it changed with the carrot. But when the carrot wasn't there, we couldn't apply the stick, because the stick just means you have to be everywhere all the time. So one of the disadvantages of not being able to apply the stick is that, or was that, you actually had situations where even if it was a Masada or Mr. Clean, the bigger companies, as well as the smaller tricycle groups, people would have their garbage collected for a month. When the service provider would come for payment, they'd refuse to pay. And there was nothing they could do. Because, you know, going to the police for a case like that, going to court would just take so much time, so much effort, and this wasn't worth their while. So this question of compliance, you know, enforcement also played in. So
Mayor, I'm so sorry to cut you there. I would look at the enforcement and compliance, but I just want the public to first of all
know what the
bylaws.
I'm about to tell you.
So they get that. Because before now, the city council, not under your administration though, I recall it was even back then in the days of President Ernest Bai Koroma, they had this, I think it was Operation Weed, Operation Free Flow. It worked for like 2 weeks.
Yeah,
so
but
people, for some reason, were doing community policing now. We're reminding others, oh, you shouldn't litter the streets. You shouldn't even urinate in the streets. For about 2 weeks, it worked. You saw mass compliance, but that was because there was awareness to understand what that was.
So the reason I'm giving this background is because when it comes to sanitation, it's important that people understand context. It's also important that people understand what we've done, because they were all part of what we've done. Everybody participated in the Cleanest Zone competition. People started to use Find Me in Freetown, you know, to look for their waste service provider. So they know that Mayor had brought in a system. They need to understand what went wrong. They need to understand that those transfer stations that we built were not operated, and that had an impact. The sanitary landfill, because many people have said, oh, but they don't say where Mayor talks it and they can't lock bomb. You know, so it's important that people understand that there's a reason why something that was said has not happened. It's part of addressing exactly what you said, Fabian, which is the psyche. People need to understand that no. Mayor not just did talk and then it not happen. There was a reason. So let's get the reason understood, and then let's say, okay, now in light of these facts, this is now what we're going to do. So we understand, we lay the groundwork, as it were. So what do the new bylaws say? And again, I want to say thanks to everybody who contributed, to the many people who were part of stakeholder engagement, to the Ministry of Local Government that took it to the Attorney General's office, and to the parliamentarians who supported us through this process. So thank you to everyone. Now the law is in place, and the law does this. It divides the city into 8 blocks, from Ward 399 to Ward 446. And every 6 wards is 1 block. So we have 8 blocks, blocks 1 to 8. From Allentown to Levuma, 1 to 8. So that's how the city is divided from a waste management perspective. And we use it internally in council for other things as well. What the law now says is that every block is serviced by a waste service provider authorized by FCC. So this is FCC collecting your garbage, but FCC is working through a contractor that we have selected through a public procurement process. That process has been concluded. It went on for several months. It went through the National Procurement, Public Procurement Agency. It's all been done. So the 8 blocks now have a waste service provider associated with them. In some cases, one waste service provider has 2 blocks, but you will see the list and that will go out. So number 1, we are now operating in blocks. Number 2, each block has a waste service provider that is responsible to collect the garbage from your house on behalf of council. Number 3, each household must, and business, each property must register with your waste service provider for your waste to be collected. Sitting beneath all of this is our digital property rate system. So you remember that some years ago, we introduced a digitization of our property rates. That means we have a digital image and a database of every property in the city. Last month, we did 21 days of a drone survey across the city to update that data. So we have data on every property. So in the app where the registration is happening, we already know where you are. And when you register, it will come up on the app, it will come up on our system that household number 13 Campbell Street has registered. Now, before, the non-compliance was if you threw your garbage in the street. But of course, if you're not registered for household waste collection, we know that you're going to throw your garbage in the street. If you're not going to do it directly, you're going to do it by using an unauthorized waste provider like Clean Saloon, who will take your garbage and throw it in the street. So non-compliance now is non-registration. So if you don't agree, you don't register for your waste to be collected, we will see it because we have the data and we will enforce it. Now our Met Police don't need to be going around looking to see if they can catch you. They just need to go to the houses that are not registered and exercise the enforcement at your doorstep. To make this easy, because obviously with 129,000 properties in our city, even the registration process has to take time. You might want to be registered, but your waste service provider might be starting in the street next to you and may not get to you. So we ourselves are we're going through a process of a rollout. But as Fabian said, in order for this to be effective, the first thing that needs to happen is for us all to understand what the new laws are. So in addition to doing what I'm doing here, which is describing it, discussing it on television, we're going to go much deeper. You would have seen, I hope you've seen DORTI MUS Go. I hope you guys have started seeing our flyers. You've seen little Fatu, who is the DORTI MUS Go mascot. Fatu wears her yellow dress with her little blue flag, and she's telling us all, DORTI MUS Go. And DORTI go when you comply with the new bylaws, because the companies that have come on board have come with their equipment, they've come with the staff to enable them to be able to do the rollout and collect your garbage. But you know, it's to make it
on the list of the companies.
What do you call
Clean Saloon?
Are you talking about Clean Saloon? They're not companies. Clean Saloons, very sadly, this is one of the tragedies that our nation is facing. It's not even a city challenge, because I recently spoke to the mayors of Bow and McKinney, and I was so surprised to find that they had the same issue. Clean Saloon, as we now know it, not the original Clean Saloon. Clean Saloon, and I'll do it. Clean Saloon, people understand what I'm talking about. This is actually the result of the illegal substance abuse that is going on, that's ravishing the youth of our country. There is the young men who are collecting that garbage are almost entirely substance abusers or victims. Let me call them victims, because you're a victim if on a daily basis your dead body is found on the streets. And this is something that as a nation we should be really alarmed about. My colleagues in Bow and McKinney explained that they are also seeing this phenomena of young men, typically men. I rarely see women, even though women are also suffering from the kush abuse, but typically men collecting garbage in order to get a fix. They have no interest in waste management. It is not a business, it's not a vision. They collect that money, they take it to the first place they can leave it, and they take the money and go and buy the kush or whatever it is they're wanting to buy. The reason I say it's a tragedy, we have many young people. We promoted the growth of this sector. We engaged over 1,400 young people who are in the waste sector today. We trained them, we equipped them, you know, we empowered them. And today, many of them have moved on in their lives and moved up in their lives because DORTI na them business. With these guys, DORTI no to them business. Sadly, it's just a way of getting some quick money in order for them to feed a habit. We, even in this service with the service providers, because there are existing service providers who aren't big enough to take on the whole block, we have instructed all our service providers to work with the existing waste management businesses that they find in their blocks. To seek them out, we are also connecting them so that they build on what is already there, and we don't put people out of business. So we're very clear about that. But I really think it's important for you, Fabian, for the viewers to know and understand. Many people understand, but because there's been this gap of capacity, people have chosen to use them. But anybody who's walking around and has no vehicle is only going to take your waste away from your door. They're not going to dispose of it legally. They're just going to take it to the middle of the road, throw it over a bridge, and that's not good for us as a nation. That's not good. But I think I want to use this opportunity to say something else on this point. When you have a situation, which we have now, where almost every morning, as the sweepers are sweeping the streets, they are also discovering the dead bodies of our youth. This is a crisis. And it's a crisis that can't be brushed under the table. It's one we need to look at. It was announced as a national emergency about a year ago. I don't think very much has been done about this national emergency. Certainly, if work has been done, it needs to be amplified. And the most important element is that we've got to stop the influx of the illegal substances and the manufacture of them in country. We need to go to the source. You know, you can go and round up the users, but just more drugs come into the market and more users are created. And when I say created, they're created. You know, one of the things that we did last week was to commission the new wall that's been built around Akibobet School and Tower Hill Municipal School. Prior to this time, the school was being used as a passageway. And one of the things that the head teacher said to me was, you know, we had people coming in and trying to sell drugs to our students. You know, and kids are curious. They will, oh, let try. And that's how their lives get lost. So we've got to stop the source. And that really is an imperative. But coming back to waste management. Yes. Coming back to waste management. So that's the new law. So A, we've got blocks. B, the blocks have service providers. C, you're expected to register. Failure to register means that we will have to then enforce. And D, in order for us all to understand this properly, not just to hear it once, but for it to really soak in, we have a media campaign going on. If you're on an AfriCell, you'll be seeing SMS messages from us. We've got a song that will be coming out very soon. We have SMS, we're going to Orange and QCell for them to do the same. But very, very importantly, we are also coming to your communities. We are physically going to be moving across the entire city, ward by ward, and doing a cleanup so that it's almost like a fresh start, so a reset. So we will work with communities, with all of us, one day at a time, one ward at a time, to do a public space cleaning, because that's where your home garbage has been ending up. It's been ending up in the public space. So we're going to, with you, Freetonians, with you, we're going to be doing a public space cleaning in every ward. And as we leave that ward, the new waste service provider will be stepping in and collecting your garbage. So we don't want to go back to you putting your garbage in the gutters, on the streets, and so on. Now, one thing that was mentioned as well in the introduction was, what do we do about the informal communities? What do we do about the hard-to-reach areas? And just a word on how we ended up having these. This city had a population in 2015 of 1 million people. The World Bank's projections that were done in 2018 anticipates that we will have 2 million people by 2028. That is a crazy population growth, one of the highest in the world. We're one of the fastest growing cities. And with that sort of growth, in order for municipal services to be delivered, in order for lives to be protected from natural disasters, there should be planning. There should be planning, and there should be the use of building permits as a development control. Because you should be able to say, this area you cannot build here because you will block a waterway. You cannot build here because it's too steep,
Mayor,
and this will lead to a landslide.
Would look at the permits and the situation that it poses, but still on waste management.
This is on waste management.
Yes, with waste management, one of the greatest challenges we face in waste management, plastic.
Before we get to that,
whether it's the sachets, whether it's the bottles themselves, as it rains, we're seeing them flooding.
Yeah.
What's the arrangement with the manufacturers themselves, these companies that their business involves producing products in
I'm going
plastics?
to come to that, but because we're working out the whole spectrum of the household collection, you have 45% of our residents who live in informal settlements. 45% live in informal settlements. They live in hard-to-reach areas. So I can't just talk about people collecting the garbage from Victor's house. We need to say what happens to those people who will be using plastic, but who can't be reached, physically can't be reached. And the reason it's so important for us to understand this is because there's a tendency often for us to look at the surface, for us to look at the effect, but not the cause. When you're talking about sanitation, you cannot only look at the effect. If you want to solve the problem, you must understand the cause. If you have a population that is increasing massively in a city, but there is no land use planning, that means people build anywhere. The council cannot stop. I mean, literally, if you go to, I'll just use this example. If you go to Low Cost, right now, where the bridge was at Low Cost, the waterway has been blocked by a 4-story building. The council does not issue building permits, but when it floods, which it will do, the council will be called upon. So it's important that we understand this, because sanitation, flooding, they're very linked. And the disasters that we can prevent can only be prevented if we are able to use land use planning and development control to protect our landscape and to also improve access for sanitation. As it happens, 45% of our residents live in communities that cannot be accessed by these service providers. Mount Oriole is inaccessible by road. They cannot go there to collect your garbage door by door. So what we're having to do is to come up with a different system where we will be seeking, and even this is a challenge, because even if you want to put a skip bin in a community, it needs to be put there and removed by a vehicle. So we are really working on an alternative where we bring it to the edge of those communities, and there is a pay-to-use mechanism. There are closed skip bins, and these will be rolling out, sadly, slightly behind this first rollout, because there's a whole procurement process in order to be able to acquire those. To your point about the plastic. So this is, I've been reminded many times, this is a Unitarian government. So back in 2018, we started to engage plastics manufacturers. The then Minister of, he was then Chief Minister, David Francis, insisted that this is a national issue and therefore the city could not take leadership on it. So we have had to step away from making any sort of edicts with the plastic manufacturers. That said, we are aware that the Ministry of Environment has been working on a plastics policy, a national plastic policy. In the meantime, for Operation DORTI MUS Go, we are engaging the plastic manufacturers. We can't do it sort of from the perspective of a law, because we're not able to institute a law that targets a business type within a national setting, if you see what I mean. Because if I target this business that's doing plastic, they're also doing it in Kenema and in Port Loko. So, you know, when it comes to, we can do a law like we've done with the bylaw, but we're struggling a little bit. If there was a willingness for it to happen, I'm sure it could happen, but there isn't. So what we're going to have to do is to really work on moral suasion and collaboration, which we believe we will get. So we have a series of meetings planned over the next couple of weeks as part of the rollout of Operation DORTI MUS Go. We're meeting the keke riders, we're meeting all the different stakeholders. We've already met with the Traders Council so that everybody plays their part. And the plastic manufacturers will also be on that list for them to play their part. We won't be doing it as legislation, but we'll certainly be doing it as this is your corporate social responsibility within the city, and I'm confident that we will get some feedback. That cleanup that I talked about is part of our flood mitigation. So we'll be dealing with what is there, but people's behavior change will enable it not to come back there. Fabian, Victor, the plastic we see when it rains comes from Freetonians. It comes from Freetonians illegally depositing their waste. That's why it's in the gutters, and that's why it's in the waterways. So going to the heart of the matter, going to the source, going to the household collection, the business waste collection is one way of dealing with it. But the other thing that people need to stop doing, you know, which we talk about all the time, and the keke riders, one of their leaders reached out to me, sent me a voice note and said, could we put a little bin in every keke? And we will have the meeting with them. But it's interesting that people are looking for FCC to provide that. I said to him, why you not just put plastic bag na yumoto can tell them for putandi? You know, this idea that we must, as a city, now even provide this in your keke. You know, and I'm thinking, surely let's all just agree that we're not going to have your passengers throw the garbage out of the car, out of the keke. That's also with us. That's also with our behavior. You know, our thinking needs to change. We were at my school, Esther Fidelis, at Convent Thanksgiving the other day, and on Syke Street, there are a number of bins, you know, the litter bins to put your water and your sausage just as you move along. Literally, in front of the bins, people were dropping their water bottles. I'm not saying it was Conventonians, it was all the guests, everybody. And that happened at Prince of Wales, it happens everywhere. I watched Thanksgiving kids along Jomo Kenyatta Road yesterday. Two sets. By the time they were gone, Jomo Kenyatta was just a mess, you know? And because everybody does it. Everybody does it.
It's interesting.
So we need to change our behaviors.
Struggle to defend your school.
Oh, absolutely. I just realized I need to make sure that everybody understands that all the schools are doing this.
The coldest Thanksgiving we've
no.
seen
It was great.
But we'll put that aside for
next year. Wait
day.
for us, because that wasn't our big year. Next year, 160. You'll see.
We'll put that aside for another day. Just this morning, during the banter, we spoke about the challenge of city planning and the need for permits. I remember reaching out to you when I worked on the story last year concerning parking provision in the city. And that story took me as well to the Ministry of Lands. And the minister said the planning, or they had initiated the process of divulging that responsibility to the councils to issue out permits. Is there an update on your side from that process that was initiated?
It's still initiated. There's no update. I believe the law is going to Parliament soon. I understand perhaps next week. And then we'll be looking for implementation. So I'm so excited to hear the minister referencing it. We're very much, and not just me, when I say we, I'm speaking about the local council association, Sierra Leone.
What difference would it make if that responsibility is divulged to the council?
For one thing, he who feels it knows it. Okay, so when there's a flood, it's not down to, you don't see the Ministry of Lands clearing the streets, you see the council. So the very, very immediate difference is that those who have to clean up the mess will now be able to prevent that. We spend so much money on disaster management supported. Obviously, there's a National Disaster Management Agency, but there are many small disasters. Yesterday, that rain that came, the streets in the East End, particularly the Old Road, are covered with silt. SLRA should be very concerned about this because it destroys the road. But we're very concerned about it because as the custodians of the city, everybody looks to us. But why is that happening? Because permits are being, well, not even permits are being given. We know that permits aren't given. Nobody even bothers to go for permits by and large. I think the last audit that was done of the permits system that was done by Audit Services Sierra Leone in 2019 showed that less than 15%, you know, for every 100 properties, only about 15 have permits. So people don't even bother with permits. They build anything anywhere. And in doing so, one of the major issues we're having with our hillsides is erosion. You know, because the areas are cleared and you're left with just the brown dirt. And when it rains, of course, all of that just washes down. So having the connection between service delivery and development control means that you've got people who are taking those decisions, who care about the consequences, understand the consequences, and very importantly, have a footprint around the city.
Is it
so
too
just
late
just
to
very
correct
quickly,
the problems within the city and do proper planning? Is it too late?
It's not too late because every single day, Fabian, there's a structure going up. So, you know, the regeneration, the retrospective application of laws will take some time and it will take some careful thinking. But it's been done in other cities. What are some of the easy things that we can do? Let me give you an example. We currently are working on a regeneration plan, and we're funded a regeneration plan for the Central Business District. You know, so yes, the Central Business District has been here for, you know, 200 years. But this Central Business District, the plan involves us having, of course, to engage those who have the mandate, because SLRA has the road mandate, we don't. SLRSA is also a party to road safety, which means they're also involved. But we're going to be widening the pavements. It's not our mandate, but we have found the resources to fix the street furniture, all those railings that are broken and lying down, to put street lighting. That's also not our mandate, but this is our city. Everybody feels we're responsible. We are responsible, even though mandates sit with others. So there's something you can do about regeneration.
Are you working now solo as a council?
You just heard me mention SLRA, and you heard me mention SLRSA. Yeah, so how can you say, am I working solo?
Collaborating.
You just heard me mention SLRA and SLRSA.
You're saying you're taking that responsibility.
I said we're working with those with the mandate because they have the mandate, but because everybody will always look to us. We are the custodians of the city. We don't have the mandate, but we've raised the funds and we're partnering with those with the mandate in order for us to do it.
Are you giving them the funds to implement it, or is it the council that is doing the implementation?
The funds are actually being given by the organization, it's a sister city, the city of Zurich in Switzerland. They are funding this work for us, and they have chosen to work through an implementing partner. So they actually have hired UN Habitat, and the funds go through UN Habitat. So UN Habitat have an office here now that's working with us, but we are collaborating. So we have an MOU being signed between ourselves and the other partner organizations, and we are working. We have team meetings. They're on our project implementation unit. So we have a structure. They're on the steering committee. So we look through it, we discuss it. When we go on the field, even when we're going on the field.
But it still doesn't answer where the money would be sent.
It's UN Habitat.
No.
UN Habitat.
Are they the ones implementing
UN
it? Or
Habitat.
Are they providing the money to either the council or SLRA or
They're
SLRSA?
not providing the money to any government agency. The funds are going to be implemented. They will work with us, but all the funds, the money will sit with the implementing partner, not with any of the government agencies, not with us, not with the other government agencies.
I asked that to get that clearly for a good reason. Now, with SLRSA, for example, or even SLRA or SLRTA, these institutions already have professionals in these establishments, like engineers and so on, that you would say takes off a chunk of the budget because they already have these existing structures.
No, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. For one thing, the city of Zurich's taxpayers are the ones funding this. They had to go to my colleague mayor, Corinne Mouch, who will be here in November, had to do a referendum in her city in order to be able to get them to agree to give this money, 2.5 million Swiss francs, to a city that many Zurich residents had never even heard of. They have a fiduciary responsibility, which they have agreed in their council when they passed it as a resolution. And because of that fiduciary responsibility, they've decided that they want to work with an institution that they can audit and they can be very comfortable with in terms of the use of funds. I think what matters to us is that the work gets done. And I believe that's the approach that, you know, we are all happy to take. They also have engineers, and the engineers will collaborate. The SLRA engineers have lots of work that they're doing. In order to do this project, you need to be totally focused on it. You need a whole project team. So a project team has been built. It sits at Freetown City Council. They are staffed with UN Habitat, and they are also using staff from GOAL. They've hired a team to do this work. So I think when it's somebody else's money, they also have an interest, and we should be able to respect that. It's certainly not seen as a competition from our perspective, and we have a very good working relationship with SLRA and SLRSA as partners on this, and we're going through the stakeholder engagement now, and very soon, hopefully before Mayor Corinne comes to Freetown in November, we will see the beginnings of implementation. This is going to have a controlled parking zone as well, so we'll see proper controlled parking. But you asked the question because this question came up because we were talking about whether it's possible to retrospectively have planning. And the answer is yes. You know, and there's really important things that can be done. Going forward, at the moment, people build anywhere with no road access. Going forward, with planning techniques and urban planners, council has actually engaged, and we've now employed two urban planners. We're going to have a third on board very soon. We're doing this futuristically. We're doing this knowing how important it is, even though we don't have the mandate yet. We are preparing. We've been preparing since 2018, because to be able to manage a city effectively without being able to determine what gets built where and how. You know, the cityscape that you see in cities doesn't happen by chance. If you want to do even a roof improvement, an extension on a property in the UK, you have to go to the council. They need to look at the design, you know, and they want to make sure it is consistent with what else is being built on the street. It's not blocking the light from your neighbor. It's not resulting in the cutting down of, you know, trees that are under a conservation order. There's so many considerations which simply don't come into play in Freetown at the moment, or indeed in Sierra Leone, where literally people will build and block their neighbor's view. They will block a road access. They will block a waterway because there's no oversight. And when you think about a government agency, a ministry, there's going to be a limited number of staff, you know, and they're based in UE building. But if you say the councils aren't issuing building permits, that means in Pujehu, you have to be the one to check what's happening there. In Kono, you have to be the one that's checked what's happening there. In Freetown, with, you know, this huge population, 25% of the population of the country, you have to check in every corner. Local councils are local councils for a reason. We have our footprint across the entire locality. Every ward, sadly PR changed that, but we're looking forward to that being reversed and for us to go back to, you know, a system where we actually have the wards aligned with the councillors, because we have 48 wards in Freetown, only 40 councillors due to the reduction in our number of seats during the election. We look forward to that being changed after the upcoming census in December 2026. So with this important information, I think residents, perhaps the biggest takeaway from this would be register, comply, you know, on our website, and soon, hopefully this afternoon, the flyer will begin to go out with the names and the telephone numbers for all the block service providers, and also information so you can see easily which block you're in.
What's the grace period before the penalties would begin to be instituted for defaulters?
Okay, it's a very good question, Fabian. So the grace period is going to be one that will be rolled out. So this is not fixed, because as I explained to you, if you take block 1, for example, the rollout of the waste service provider, their pace is effectively what we come behind. So as they move through the ward, enforcement moves behind them. So it's to an extent, it's kind of the pace at which they go. We are our projected, our expectation, what we're asking the waste service providers to do is we're looking to ensure that we have everybody registered by the end of 2025. So by the end of this year, we're hoping that we would have, they would have been able to cover their entire blocks, and that then full enforcement will start. But enforcement will start gradually. You know, as we move through your area, we expect you to have registered. Failure to do so would require an explanation.
And what's the penalty?
It's 5,000 new Leones, which
for all the bylaws?
So the bylaw, yes, so the bylaw penalty, so the bylaw also talks about not washing your clothes in the streets, not, I have to remember these, not selling timber, you know, so there are other elements which affect sanitation, which are in the bylaw. And the penalty for all non-compliance is 5,000 new Leones, or if we end up having to take you to court, which would be unfortunate, the sentence is a maximum of 6 months. And it can even be and. It could be 5,000 Leones and the penalty. So it's quite steep, and we are hopeful that this itself will be a deterrent and people will choose. Everybody talks about wanting a clean city, but the city can only be clean if the same people who talk about it actually change behaviors and comply with the new legislation.
Last question for me would be, how much would a household be paying on a monthly basis for these services?
Right, so I will come back to you on that. We're in discussions still with the service providers, and I think one of the things that, what I can tell you absolutely is that payment will not be arbitrary. It's going to be based on the size of the bin. So we'll be rolling out as well. And this is also a gradual one. We'll be rolling out bins, both specialized bags, which we can show on a display. Maybe we'll put it on one of the flyers for people to see the clothes. And they're waterproof and they're sturdy, as a sort of option 2 if you don't want to purchase a 120 liter plastic bin. So you've got options, so people can, what your pocket fits, you can go with that direction. And like I said, it will be a fixed price per size of collection, so for a 120 liter bin. But I want to come back to you on that once we've finalized our discussions with the service providers. These are local companies. I mean, the local companies, one of the companies has Kenyan partners, but they are by and large local companies.
Okay.
Are these service providers up and ready to move now? Because once you're engaging the public, there are really decent citizens amongst us who are willing and ready to comply even now if you give them an opportunity.
I actually made a call this morning because my mom was saying the person who used to collect her garbage hadn't come. So I looked online, found her service provider and called them this morning and said, you know, I would like you to come and collect. And they said, oh, well, we're going to be registering from next week. Please send us our address. We'll make sure we go to you, and then we can take it from there. And then and I said, okay, so this is Yvonne Aki-Sawyerr. Thank you. That was a very good answer.
quickly, for those people who perhaps feel like, I want to determine who my service provider is, are they at liberty to do so, or have you already discussed who is responsible for what area?
We set out a bid. You know, we actually cannot have this level of individuality.
No, I mean from amongst the service providers you've listed in the system.
Yes. No.
Can the people just randomly choose their service provider, or it has to be done
it has
by
to be
your
the block.
locality?
It has to be the block, because each service provider is allocated a certain number of households based on the block. You know, they get the data in terms of all the addresses. You know, they get that for the block. We need to monitor their performance. We're going to be monitoring their performance as well. They have minimum standards, service level agreements that they're signing with us. And failure for them to deliver on their standards and for them to perform can also lead to them losing their contract with us. So this can't just be, no, you're working here, this is where you work, and we will judge you and assess your performance based on how well you service your residents.
Okay.
We have some messages on our Facebook page. We would read.
And one thing I'll just quickly say, I remember when we introduced property rate system, and people were like, hey, this is not gonna work, it's not gonna work. We're doing it. You know, so change is change.
How well is it going?
It's going really well. I mean, it's now fully accepted. Compliance, of course, is a different thing, but NRA still has the same problem. Our economy is in a very bad state, and that affects people's ability as well as willingness. But this system is now being rolled, our property rate system that we designed, is now being rolled out in other cities in Sierra Leone, as well as in other cities in Africa. So this is a new system. We've thought about it, we've researched, we've worked on this for over 3 years. There will be resistance to change, because there always is. But we will be persistent, because we need a clean city. DORTI must go.
Okay, Ahmed Kones says, people often avoid applying for building permits because the system is not properly managed. For example, one person may be granted a permit to construct a building in a particular area, while another person is denied or faces unnecessary difficulties trying to build a similar structure in the same location.
Swissman, you know, continue.
Yes, go on.
Okay. Swissman is saying, in the case of plastic waste in the country, I think we the people are responsible for the misuse of plastic in the country. What the council is supposed to do is to enforce stiff punishment on anyone that's found guilty on throwing their waste on the streets. And the company should have a refinery machine if they're dealing with bottles of plastic water.
Leo the Lion says, theoretically speaking, it sounds good, but practically, Madam Mayor, are you sure it's going to work with all the dirty water plastics in the street?
Our friend is saying, Madam Mayor, are there plans to e-waste management system? Most of these electronic waste devices are hazardous to the environment. Also, how do you plan to expand the circular economy strategy of solid and liquid waste, not forgetting plastic waste recycling?
Edwina John is asking, how soon is the project going to commence? I think that would be my last speak.
Okay, so the person who talked about building permits not being effective, I think the point I was making is that Freetown City Council does not issue building permits. That's being done by the Ministry of Lands, and we really look forward to it being devolved to the council and for us to implement an effective building permitting system that will help us make the city more livable and safer. With respect to plastic waste, indeed, it is our responsibility. But the person also, I'll just tie this in with the circular economy. So you'll be pleased to know that this afternoon at 1 o'clock and at 1:45 in sequence, consecutively, I'll be engaging, or we at the council will be engaging with 2 companies who are looking to partner with us to introduce plastic recycling at scale at Kisi and King Tom dump sites respectively. And we're really excited about this prospect. We've had lots of people come forward over the years with these ideas, but it's always challenging to actually find the people with the capital and the experience to deliver on the service. I think we've got that this time. I'm hopeful, but whatever the case, whether we succeed with them or not, this is something that we're working to. And somebody said in terms of the circular economy, liquid and solid waste. Well, I'm sure many of you are aware of the liquid waste work we're doing at King Tom, where we're converting the liquid waste, what comes from our toilets, into briquettes. And that's definitely the circular economy. We'll continue to build on that. So very excited, and hope that at my next visit here, I'll be able to say we have now engaged XYZ in terms of plastic recycling at Kisii and at King Tom. The person who said practical versus theoretical, this is the same point I was making when we started with the digital property rate system. We had the same pushback. You know, it's not going to work, it's working. We need to just be determined, and we need to actually see this not as something that's about us, but about us all. It's not about FCC. That's why our DORTI Must Go campaign, you know, what we sent out a video that was done with Negadon, Boy, and Collabo and Becca, and we're asking people, add your voice. Yusuf Tokam, DORTI Must Go. Let's all internalize this. Let this be a determination from us. The implications, the impact is going to be massive. You know, I've worked on, sanitation was one of the reasons, sanitation and the environment were what drove me to run for mayor. So this has been what consumes me day in and day out for years. But until we all decide that for us to have better health, typhoid and malaria, major killer in the city, it would be really, really impacted by our behavior change. For us to be able to have more tourists come and want to come and not have our beaches littered with garbage. You know, these are things that we have to decide to do. So DORTI Must Go, not for mayor the talk and for INSEF, not for we all. E-waste, couldn't agree with you more. Especially now that everybody is using devices, there is so much e-waste. It's our next step. You know, we've got to start with what's immediately in front of us. It's got to start somewhere, but e-waste has to be dealt with. It's a challenge globally. And the person who asked about timelines, so we are hopeful that the clean out, so like I explained, the rollout comes with the cleanup. So the deep clean that we're doing ward by ward is how we are rolling out. Because as we come to the community, to your ward, as we work with you to collectively clean our public spaces, your waste service provider does a detailed registration. So as that's going on, and then as we leave you and go to the next ward, then the services start. So that's the rollout plan in terms of sequence and in terms of dates. I know my team are always watching to say, what's she gonna say, what's she gonna say? I'm gonna say that we will confirm that by the end of this week. So guys, you can all relax. Mayor has not given you a deadline that you can't meet. We all know what we're working towards. It's sooner rather than later, but let me give the teams a chance to just make sure all the ducks are in a row before we announce. We've obviously got the rainy season putting pressure on us. So this is going to happen very, very soon because we need to get this done before the rains become too heavy.
Thank you very much, Mayor, for joining us this morning.
Unfortunately, I didn't ask about the quote-unquote no PCR policy, street urination. You didn't talk about
It's in the bylaw.
Okay, it's there.
It's in the bylaw, and
okay.
we are constructing right now. The contractors out doing 15 public toilets.
Okay.
With our Blue Peace funding, and then we've got another, they're in 5 communities, a bit more restricted, but then 99, those are units, not individual, so units, so cubicles, 99 more public toilets in Moiba, Rukupa, and Coconut Farm as part of an informal settlement upgrade. So we will be pushing on that as well. But in the same way that we've had to recognize that without adding more capacity, compliance is challenging. We recognize that with the public toilets as well. But at the end of the day, there's also just a behavior. There's just a mindset change that people need to have. I'm sure some of these gentlemen can hold it a little bit and not just do it in the middle of the street. But yeah, I will end on this note. DORTI must go.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. And once it starts, we would have subsequent conversations to understand the system properly, how it works, how people can pay, whether it's prepaid, postpaid, and all those systems would get to talk about.